My name is Brian Miller. Mid-40s, American, married 20 years, 3 kids, one small web development company that pays the bills and then some. My life wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I built it the way you build a clean website. Simple structure, no unnecessary features, nothing you can't maintain. I had a wife who kissed me goodbye in the mornings, kids who turned every room into a mess, and a house that always needed something fixed. It felt like proof that showing up every day actually worked. Lauren and I met young, married before either of us really knew what for life meant, and grew into it along the way. Jason came first, then Ethan, then Olivia, each one another reason to grind a little harder. My company started in the spare bedroom with a single client and a cheap coffee machine. 2 decades later, we had a small office, 10 employees, and enough recurring contracts that I could exhale a little. That's where the checkup came from. HR rolled out a health and wellness initiative. Full medical exams for all employees, paid by the company. It sounded like one of those corporate feel-good ideas. Blood work, ultrasound, stress test, the usual boxes to tick. I signed up because that's what you do. Take care of yourself so you can keep taking care of everyone else. The clinic was bright, efficient, and forgettable. They moved me from station to station like a package on a conveyor belt, blood pressure, vials of blood, heart monitor, the usual questions about alcohol, sleep, stress. I answered on autopilot. Married, 3 kids, own a business, no major issues. Near the end, the doctor, a guy in his 50s with kind eyes and a tired posture, looked over my chart and said almost casually, "Since we're doing the full workup, we can add a fertility analysis, just to complete the picture." I almost laughed. "Pretty sure that part works," I said. "I've got 3 kids." He smiled, shrugging like it was no big deal. "I'm sure you're fine. It's optional. Some men like having the information." It felt like being asked if I wanted an extra report on a server I already knew was running. Pointless but harmless. I signed the additional form without thinking, another scribble on top of a stack. The test itself was awkward in the way all fertility tests are, but I treated it like every other part of the exam. Annoying, mildly embarrassing, over soon. Then I walked out of that building thinking about emails I had to answer, deadlines I needed to meet, and what Lauren might want for dinner. If you'd stopped me in the parking lot and told me that little extra test had just started the destruction of my entire life, I would have laughed it off and kept walking. But that's how it really happens. Not with dramatic music. Not with thunder. Just a simple, easy yes to something you don't know is about to burn everything down. The day I went back for my results, I wasn't nervous. I walked into that clinic like a guy checking a to-do box, thinking more about my afternoon meetings than my blood work. The same doctor greeted me, the same bland office, the same stack of papers in a manila folder. He sat down across from me, put the folder on the desk, and started talking in that calm, professional tone they all learn in school. "Overall, you're in good health," he said, flipping through pages. "Cholesterol is a bit high but manageable. Liver function is normal. The cardiac stress test looks fine." I nodded along. None of this mattered. I was already half standing in my mind, ready to shake his hand and leave. Then he turned to the last page, his eyes pausing a little too long. "There is one finding I need to discuss with you," he said. "It's regarding the fertility analysis." I remember leaning back in the chair, relaxed. "Yeah, the bonus test." He didn't smile. He laced his fingers together instead. "Mr. Miller, based on the results and follow-up analysis, you appear to have a congenital condition that affects sperm production. In plain terms, you were born with this. You're sterile, and have been your entire life." The words didn't land at first. They just drifted in the air between us like noise. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "I have 3 kids. He adjusted his glasses, looked genuinely sorry. "I understand this is difficult to hear, but these tests are very clear. You do not have viable sperm. You never have." He started explaining the condition, Latin words, percentages, medical studies. It all blurred into static. Only one sentence carved itself into my head. "You were always sterile." I walked out of that office on autopilot. The receptionist said something about scheduling a follow-up. I nodded, maybe answered, I don't know. I stepped into sunlight that felt too bright and got into my car like a man sitting in the wrong vehicle. The streets were familiar. Same gas station, same strip malls, same stoplights I'd hit 100 times on the way home. But it all looked like a set built for someone else's life. The ring on my hand felt heavier. The word sterile just kept repeating. By the time I got home, denial had already started doing its job. The lab messed up. Samples got switched. It's temporary. It's reversible. There has to be some other explanation. I told myself every story except the obvious one. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and searched for second opinion clinics. I found one in the next city over. High reviews. Discreet. I booked an appointment for the soonest they had. The next morning, I told Lauren it was just a follow-up from the wellness program. Routine. She kissed my cheek and told me not to worry about getting back in time for dinner. I said I wouldn't. The second clinic was colder. Less small talk, more forms. I went through the same humiliating process again. This time with a quiet desperation I didn't show on my face. Then came the worst stretch of time I've ever lived through. A full week waiting for results. 7 days where sleep turned into short blackouts and food tasted like cardboard. I worked, answered emails, joked with my staff, and came home to my family every night like I wasn't a man waiting to find out if his entire life made sense or not. When the envelope finally came, they didn't even call me in. Just a thick, sealed packet with my name on it. I sat in my car in their parking lot, engine off, envelope on my lap. My hands wouldn't rip it open at first. For a solid minute, I just stared at it, knowing that as long as it stayed sealed, there was still a chance this was all some bureaucratic glitch. Then I tore it open. I flipped through the pages until I found the summary. Different logo, different letterhead, different doctor. Same conclusion. Congenital condition. Non-viable sperm. No history of fertility. No possibility of natural conception. Past, present, or future. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just felt something inside me lock into place, like steel freezing. On the drive home, the memories started hitting me in sequence. Jason's first scream in the delivery room. Ethan's tiny hand wrapped around my finger in the NICU. Olivia wobbled down the sidewalk on her bike while I jogged behind her, one hand on the seat. Each memory stopped being a warm replay and turned into the same cold, brutal question echoing in my skull. If I was always sterile, then how is any of this possible? Once the second clinic confirmed it, the question stopped being if something was wrong and became how bad it really was. I lasted 2 more days pretending nothing had changed. 2 breakfasts, 2 school runs, 2 nights of nodding along to homework stories and TikTok drama while my brain looped the same sentence. You were always sterile. On the 3rd night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in my office with the door shut and the house quiet. I opened my browser and searched for private paternity testing labs. Not the TV drama kind. The quiet, clinical kind that works by mail and doesn't ask questions. I ordered 3 kits. 1 for each kid. My kids. When they arrived, plain white envelopes, my hands shook a little just holding them. It felt wrong, turning my children into samples, into evidence. But there was no going back to ignorance. Not now. I made it as casual as I could. A swab here while joking about some weird company wellness thing. A quick rub inside a cheek while Olivia watched a show, barely paying attention. A moment with Ethan when he walked past my office. Me turning it into a dumb little science experiment. They trusted me completely. That part hurt the most. I sealed each envelope, wrote their names, and mailed them like I was sending pieces of myself to be judged. The days waiting for those results made the week between clinics feel easy. I functioned, emails, meetings, yard work, but underneath everything was clenched. I woke before my alarm, stared at the ceiling, and felt my pulse in my teeth. When the lab envelope finally came, it was thicker than I expected. I locked my office door, put my phone face down, and sat there with the packet in my hands. For a full minute I just held it. Part of me still wanted to throw it straight into the trash, light it on fire, bury it, anything to keep the thin layer of maybe alive. Then I opened it. 3 reports. 3 separate staples. Jason, Ethan, Olivia. I read Jason's first lines of markers and probability charts, ending with the one sentence that mattered. No biological relationship detected between alleged father and child. Something in my chest went silent. I read Ethan's. Same structure. Same cold, printed sentence. Then Olivia's. No drama. No mercy. The same verdict for the third time. No biological relationship. No match. No doubt. My mind didn't explode. It went quiet. My body felt made of stone. Jaw locked, shoulders tight, hands flat on the desk. There was rage in there somewhere, but it didn't come out loud. It settled into my muscles instead, into the way my teeth pressed together. I didn't call Lauren, didn't storm into the kitchen, didn't throw chairs or smash pictures. This wasn't something to handle like a bar fight. This was surgery. So I put the reports in a folder, slid them into the bottom drawer of my desk, and walked out of my office. That night, I sat at the dinner table, listening to my family talk about their day. Lauren laughed at something Olivia said. Ethan argued with Jason about a game. It looked like every other evening we'd ever had. Except I was sitting there knowing, in black and white fact, that I was the only one at that table who had been living in a story that wasn't real. And for the first time, I felt less like a father and more like an actor who'd wandered onto the wrong set and never noticed the cameras. Knowing the truth didn't change the way the house looked. It changed the way it felt. The kitchen was still the same streaks of tomato sauce on the stove, half-finished school projects on the counter, a crooked magnet holding up Olivia's spelling test. But now it all felt like a museum exhibit of a life I'd walked through, not one I actually owned. I catch myself standing in the hallway, looking at the family photos. Jason in his football gear, Ethan with a missing tooth. Lauren held newborn Olivia while I kissed her forehead. I used to see those as proof that I'd done something right. Now I saw 20 years of me smiling next to people who knew something I didn't. At night, lying in bed next to Lauren, the distance wasn't physical. She'd shift closer, hand brushing my arm, leg touching mine. Like always. To her, nothing had changed. To me, every casual touch felt like a reminder. She'd carried 3 kids that weren't mine and never said a word. The arguments in my head were constant. One side wanted to wake her up at 3 in the morning, flip on the light, and put the DNA reports in her lap. The other side told me that once I opened my mouth, there was no undoing it. No going back to normal. And if I was going to blow up my life, I was going to do it with my eyes open, not in a blind rage. So I watched. I watched her laugh on the phone in that light, easy tone she used with friends. I watched her move through the house like the queen of a kingdom I'd paid for. I watched my kids. My kids in every way that mattered except the one that now screamed in my head. Trust her and trust me without hesitation. One afternoon, she hung up the phone, still smiling about something someone had said. I was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, heartbeat steady. Lauren, I said. She turned. Yeah. We need to talk. No shouting. No thrown objects. Just 4 words that felt heavier than anything I'd ever said. And the quiet, solid understanding in my gut that whatever came next was going to end the version of my life I'd been living. She frowned a little when I said it. Not scared. Just confused. Like I'd interrupted her during a TV show. Now? She asked. Yeah. I said. Now. We sat at the kitchen table. Same spot where we'd done bills, birthday plans, and school forms. This time, no papers, no coffee mugs. Just us. I didn't ease into it. I know the kids aren't biologically mine. Her face didn't crack the way I expected. No instant tears. No hand over the mouth. Just a small pause, one long breath in, and a slow exhale. Brian, she started. Don't, I said. I've had 2 fertility tests. Both say I've been sterile since birth. I've got DNA tests on all 3 kids. I'm not their biological father. I want the truth. All of it. Her eyes dropped to the table for a second, then came back up. It was like watching someone sort files in their head and pick the one they were finally forced to open. You're right, she said, calm, almost clinical. You're not their biological father. That was it. No attempt to deny. No, how could you? Just confirmation delivered like a lab result. I didn't move. Who is? She swallowed, but her voice stayed steady. Mark. Mark Reynolds. The name hit like a dull punch. A guy from our early years. Mutual friend. Barbecues, double dates, holidays. Hell, he'd held Jason as a baby in our living room. How long? I asked. After we got married, she said. We were trying for a while and nothing was happening. I started to worry it was you. My doctor said time wasn't on my side. Panicked. I made a choice. An affair, I said. She shook her head slightly, like the word didn't fit. It wasn't like that. It wasn't about romance or leaving you. It was a solution. I wanted us to have a family. You wanted kids. I wanted kids. We were running out of time. It was just you sleeping with someone else. I cut in. Behind my back. Repeatedly. For years. Her jaw tightened. I did what I thought I had to do. I made sure it ended once I got pregnant. We had our family. You were happy. The kids were happy. I kept it quiet so you wouldn't be hurt. If you had never found out, nothing would be different. That was the part that cut deepest. Not the cheating itself, not even the paternity. It was the way she framed it. Like a business decision. Like a sacrifice. So you lied for 20 years, I said. Every birthday. Every Father's Day. Every doctor's form with my name on it. That was you protecting me? I was protecting us, she shot back. Look at what we built, Brian. You are their father. In every way that matters. Biology doesn't change that. I carried the guilt so you could live in peace. You think that was easy for me? I stared at her. She genuinely believed that. In her mind, she wasn't a traitor. She was the one who took on the burden of lying to me for my own good. So I was supposed to live my entire life in a story you wrote, I said. Never knowing the truth. Never getting a say. It wasn't about control, she said, voice getting tighter. It was about survival. If you knew back then, you would have left. We wouldn't have the kids, the house, any of this. I chose the family over the truth. I chose you. No, I said quietly. You chose what was easiest for you and called it love. She opened her mouth, then closed it. No more excuses lined up. No more neat phrases ready to go. At that moment, something simple settled in my chest. Not a dramatic snap, not an explosion, just a clean break. I was looking at a woman who didn't see 20 years of deception as betrayal. To her, it was a clever workaround, a necessary sin. A story she got to edit as long as I stayed in the dark. The marriage didn't die when she first slept with Mark. It didn't even die when I read the DNA reports. It died right there, at that kitchen table, listening to her calmly explain how erasing my right to the truth was an act of love. That night, after the kitchen table confession, the house felt smaller. I walked through the rooms on autopilot, past the photos, the kids' shoes piled by the door, the dent in the drywall from when Jason threw a ball inside. Nothing had moved, but all of it felt like it belonged to someone else. I slept on my side of the bed, eyes open, listening to Lauren breathe like she hadn't just admitted to rewriting my entire life. By morning, one thing was clear. I couldn't stay married to her. You don't come back from 20 years of being managed like a problem. I called a lawyer from my car, parked 2 blocks from the office so I wouldn't sit in front like a man begging for rescue. Middle-aged guy, sharp suit, colder eyes than his voice. He listened while I laid it out. The sterility diagnosis, 2 clinics, the DNA tests, Lauren's confession about Mark, the timeline. I didn't dramatize it. Just facts. He took notes, then leaned back. There's a term for this, he said. What she did, knowingly misrepresenting paternity, keeping you on the hook legally and financially, is called parental fraud. The words hit harder than I expected. Not just betrayal. Not just cheating. Fraud. He laid out the path in clean, unemotional steps. Divorce petition, contesting legal paternity, motions to have my name removed from the birth certificates, potential civil damages. It sounded like building a case file for a project. Except this project was my family. Do you want to move forward? He asked. Yes, I said. No hesitation. File everything you can file. While he drafted documents, I went back to the house and stepped back into the role I was about to burn down. Husband at the table, dad in the doorway, man fixing a loose cabinet door between emails. Breakfast, school runs, weekend chatter. On the surface, nothing had changed. Underneath, every word felt like a countdown. At night, I lay awake replaying every milestone. First steps, school concerts, hospital scares. Knowing I was about to walk away from the only job that ever mattered to me. Not because I stopped loving them. Because the foundation under all of it was a lie I couldn't unknow and couldn't keep living in without losing whatever was left of myself. Courthouses don't look dramatic from the outside. Just brick, glass, and bad parking. The drama starts when your name gets called. I sat at the petitioner's table with my lawyer, suit on, and a folder of reports in front of me. Across the aisle, Lauren sat with hers. We didn't look like a couple. We looked like two people waiting for a verdict on a deal gone bad. The judge flipped through the stack my attorney had prepared, medical reports from both clinics, DNA tests for each kid, sworn statements. No music, no gasps, just the quiet rasp of pages turning while my life got converted into evidence. My lawyer spoke first. He walked the judge through it all in clean lines. Congenital sterility, zero biological possibility, independent paternity testing, the timeline of the kids' births, and finally Lauren's admission. No adjectives, just facts. Then it was her turn. Under questioning, Lauren tried to keep the calm tone she'd used at the kitchen table. She admitted that Mark Reynolds was the biological father of all three kids. She admitted she never told me. She admitted she let my name go on every birth certificate, every school form, every legal document. What was your reason for not informing your husband? The judge asked. I didn't want to destroy our family, she said. He was the only father they'd ever known. I believed if he never found out, it wouldn't matter. On paper, it sounded even colder. Dates and timelines pinned everything down. When she'd started with Mark. When each child was conceived. When she'd ended it. All those years I thought we were just trying hard, while she was solving the problem offsite. Outside that courtroom, the story started leaking. Small town, big mouths. Neighbors who'd waved from driveways, parents from school, people from my office, they all heard some version. I heard later how Mark's wife found out, walked into their house with printed screenshots and dates, and told him they were done. No yelling, just instructions to get out. Mark worked for a company that cared a lot about ethics and public image. Once the details floated their way, they reviewed his role, his conduct, and then they cut him loose. No more title, no more office, no more steady paycheck. Back in court, it all narrowed down to a few key decisions. The judge looked at me, then at Lauren. Based on the evidence, he said, this court finds that Mr. Miller is not the biological father of these children and was intentionally misled regarding their paternity. He ordered my name removed from all three birth certificates and replaced with Mark's. Legal paternity severed. Obligations terminated. I was no longer their father on paper. The divorce was granted. The judge noted her conduct as a serious breach, called it exactly what my lawyer had, parental fraud. There were financial penalties too, reimbursement, damages, legal fees. Not enough to even the scales, but enough to put it in the record that this wasn't just a family misunderstanding. It was a calculated deception. No handcuffs, no prison. Just a line in a court file saying, in effect, you weren't crazy. You were wronged. And a door closing on the life everyone thought we had. After the ruling, I walked out of the courthouse technically free. No more legal obligations. No more lies on official documents. No more pretending I didn't know what I knew. The air outside felt colder than it should have. Freedom isn't as light as people pretend. Sometimes it's just a different kind of weight. I moved into a smaller place a few weeks later. 2-bedroom rental, neutral walls, quiet street. The kind of place you take when you're not sure yet who you are without the roles you used to have. I bought basic furniture, set up a desk, plugged in my laptop, and went back to work because that's what I knew how to do. Ship code, meet deadlines, make money. What I didn't know how to do was come home to silence. First, the kids came around. Texts, calls, short visits. confusion in their faces that they didn't know how to put into words. Then it shifted. Lauren had her version of the story, and she fed it to them like medicine. I'd abandoned them. I'd chosen money over family. I turned my back on them. You repeat a lie long enough to teenagers and eventually it feels like the truth, especially when the real story is too ugly to want to touch. The calls got fewer. The texts are shorter. Ethan stopped replying altogether. Olivia went from love you to nothing. One evening, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Jason was standing there, hands in his pockets, shoulders tight. He looked older than his age, like someone who'd been sprinting with a full backpack for too long. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Come in." We sat at the small kitchen table. No TV on. No distractions. "Mom says you left because you didn't want to pay for us anymore," he said. His voice was even, but his eyes were hunting for something real. I didn't dodge it. I told him everything. The sterility diagnosis, the DNA tests, the court, the legal severing, Lauren's choices. I didn't pile on insults or try to recruit him. I just laid out the facts. He didn't yell, didn't cry, just sat there, elbows on the table, staring at a spot between us. "So, my whole life is basically built on a lie," he said. "Yeah," I answered. "Mine too." We sat with that for a while. "What happens now?" he finally asked. "Now," I said, "you decide what you want. Not what your mom wants. Not what I want. What you want. For what it's worth, you're my son. That doesn't switch off because of paperwork. But I'm not going to drag you through more chaos just to make myself feel better." He started coming by more after that. Weekends sometimes. We'd fix small things around the apartment, cook simple food, talk about work, life, and trust. Less like a dad lecturing a kid, more like two men sorting through wreckage. With Ethan and Olivia, it was different. They stayed with Lauren physically and mentally. From what little I heard, I was the villain in their version. The man who walked away. The man who chose pride over family. I could have fought harder. Call more. Showed up at events. I tried to jam myself back into their lives. But I didn't. Not because I stopped loving them. Because love isn't kicking down a door a kid is trying to hold shut. I gave them space, even though every bit of that space felt like losing them inch by inch. Some nights, in that quiet apartment, the love I had for all three of them sat in my chest like something with nowhere to go. But I learned to live with it instead of letting it eat me alive. Time didn't fix anything, but it sanded down the edges. Work stayed steady. I built new contracts, hired carefully, kept the company lean and clean. My days got simple: gym, office, emails, decent food, sleep. No chaos. No screaming matches. No walking on eggshells in my own house. My heart didn't bleed every hour anymore. It just ached sometimes. Manageable. Background noise. Then one afternoon, I opened my mailbox and saw an envelope with no return address. Just my name, written in handwriting I knew better than my own. Lauren. I carried it inside, sat at the table and opened it. No drama. No hesitation. It was long. Pages of it. She wrote about everything. Our early years, the affair with Mark, the pregnancies, the guilt, the way things had blown up. She used words like cowardice and selfishness. She said she finally understood the scale of what she'd done. She talked about losing her job, friends pulling away, the kids' trust cracking, Jason asking questions she didn't want to answer. She said she never stopped loving me, that she'd told herself the lie was a necessary evil, that seeing it all come out had forced her to face the damage. She apologized, line after line, asked for nothing specific. No reunion, no friendship, just hoped that someday you might forgive me, even if we never speak again. I read every word, not to relive it, to make sure I wasn't missing anything. There was regret in those pages. Real regret as far as I could tell. But regret doesn't rewind 20 years. It doesn't put my name back on birth certificates without a lie attached. It doesn't unmake the nights I lay awake wondering who I was in my own house. When I got to the last line, I sat there for a moment, letter in my hands, the apartment quiet. Then I folded the pages back up, stood, walked to the trash can, and dropped them in. No burning, no ripping, no dramatic speeches to an empty room. I didn't hate her. Hate takes energy I wasn't willing to keep giving her. I didn't wish her well either. I just released it. Her guilt, her story, her need to be understood. None of that was my job anymore. What I kept was simpler. Clarity about who I am and what I will and won't tolerate. The understanding that love built on lies will always collapse, sooner or later. And the conviction that standing alone in the truth is still better than being surrounded by people in a carefully staged illusion. That's why I tell this story. Not to scare men into paranoia. Not to turn every wife into an enemy in their heads. I tell it to the guy who feels something off and keeps gaslighting himself into silence. For the man who thinks starting over at zero is worse than staying in a life that doesn't add up. It's not. Losing the illusion hurts like hell. But once it was gone, what was left was real. A smaller life, maybe, but a solid one. And I'll take a hard, honest truth over a comfortable lie every time.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.